Can aftermarket exhaust really destroy your motor? Let's go over the facts and find out. You see, a surprisingly large number of people don't realize that when they attempt to upgrade their exhaust to an aftermarket system, they make a common but horrible mistake that can very easily be avoided. So today, I'm going to cover the big exhaust mistake to avoid, what happens to your bike when you do it, what to do instead, and how to fix your bike if you've already done this crap. I've been building and riding motorcycles for over 20 years. I've developed hundreds of parts, and while I'm always learning new things, this is a lesson I've already learned, and I'm excited to share it because it really matters. But you know what really matters? Just tippy tapping that little like button. Tapping that button feels a little bit like being a little fuzzy, lazy bumblebee while you're resting on a cloud of cotton candy. So just click it. Let's dive in, butthead. So what is this big mistake to avoid? Well, whether you've been eyeing some fresh exhaust because stock sucks, or you've been drooling over how badass your new aftermarket exhaust looks,
all right, stop. Collaborate
and pay attention, my son. Well, look, the biggest mistake you can make, second only to snapping off an exhaust stud, is installing an aftermarket exhaust and then doing nothing else. I've seen it 100 times. I've heard from people do this 100 times. You bolt it on, you fire the bike up, you hear it's louder than snot, and you make an assumption that you just gained some more wild ponies. And you feel like a real blue-collar man because use some tools, but you just made a huge mistake. A motorcycle's intake, combustion, and exhaust all operate as a system much like a two-sided old school scale. You know, like the scales of justice. Now, one small change to one end and the other is affected drastically. So if you don't make the appropriate changes to the entire system, the bike the bed. Sometimes it happens over time, very slowly, until it's too late to go back, and sometimes it's immediate. Now, I'll explain how this works and then get into how to do it correctly and avoid seriously costly mistakes. Here's what actually happens to your bike when you do this. Your engine is basically an air pump. Air that goes in the combustion chamber of the bike must go out the exhaust. But air is not the only thing that goes in. Fuel has to go in too. And in order to function properly, these elements must be mixed together like a wonderful baking recipe. One small change and your cake is mush. So when you change your exhaust from stock to something less restrictive, you let more air out. This with the cake, and no one likes that crappy cake. Now, you might not notice it immediately, just like when you're mixing the batter and you put your cake in the oven, you gotta wait the 45 minutes or whatever to find out you up sometimes, like it takes that long. And then you just pissed away half your ingredients only to find out you are definitely not meant for Cake Boss dreams. But with the right education, you can avoid this. And you really want to avoid this stuff because over time, it can lead to piss poor performance and inevitably actual physical damage to your engine. And I'll explain why in a second. But if you just slap that exhaust on, the bike isn't doing the happy dance anymore. And all that comes from one simple change that wasn't done. And that change, it's not even hard. That's what she said. Haha, that's what she said. I did it to myself. If you have specific questions about this kind of issue with your bike, feel free to jump on the forum and ask me any detailed questions you might have. We can handle that over there. I answer all the questions as of right now. I will put a link in the description for you. So here's the key thing to understand here. When you make a drastic change to the performance recipe of air and fuel like this, you've now thrown the entire system out of balance. It's not that the exhaust is a pile of well, you know, maybe it is. You know, and actually, if you want to know how to find out whether that exhaust is good or not, check out the video on how to spot dangerously cheap exhaust. I will put a link in the description. So you basically just can't bolt on the exhaust and go. It's not a sticker, it's not a tassel. It is an integral part of the bike's vital components. So what's actually happening to your bike when you just slap on some new exhaust? Well, first, throttle response gets weird. It's hesitating, flatulating, discombobulating, and even procrastinating. And it's even slower than before. Second, you've got more popping and backfiring, and your carb is sneezing so bad it needs some freaking Claritin because of that lean condition. And lean condition means not enough fuel in the recipe. So instead of gaining performance, you actually lose any semblance of a properly functioning engine. Now, I do see quite a few riders blame the exhaust at this point, but the exhaust is not the problem. Holy mismatch, Batman. The problem is the mismatch between airflow and fuel delivery. The 4 cycles of a 4-stroke engine are suck, squeeze, bang, blow. That's not a sexual innuendo, I promise. So let me explain. The engine sucks air and fuel in, the piston comes up to compress it, that's the squeeze, the spark plug ignites the air-fuel mixture, that's the bang, and the exhaust valve opens and the gases blow out the exhaust, blow. So, you can't take the bottom out of the whole suck, squeeze, bang, blow cycle and expect everything to just be fine. Third, damage. See, when you bring more air in and allow it to leave faster, if you don't have enough fuel, you create what's called a lean condition, which creates a ton of heat. Because get this, fuel, all right, doesn't only make power when it's combusted, it helps cool the engine. That crazy, right? It's a similar concept to like when sweat cools your skin. So if the air-fuel mixture automatically ignites from the excessive heat and pressure before or during the flame front that's created by the spark plug, you get multiple explosions. This symptom is called detonation. Basically, the explosion is happening when it's not supposed to happen.
Nothing to see here.
Which leads to melted pistons, burned valves, scored cylinder walls. This condition can actually punch holes in the pistons, and it's just a bad time for everyone. So in the simplest terms, less fuel equals less cooling equals more heat equals more parts falling apart equals your bike's now a paperweight equals you're now back to driving the Pinto. So you want to go back in time. You already screwed this up. Well, just hop in your DeLorean and tell Doc to fire up the flux capacitor, you dork. No, seriously, you can't do that. But you can move forward with a little bit of info and a smidgen of skill. And this is the part that for some reason people avoid like the plague. The fix that is actually so simple, I've seen blind monkeys do this properly with their eyes closed, hands tied behind their back, in a shark tank, with nothing but a toothpick and a can of grape soda. But seriously though, it's really not that hard. So here's the bomb, ready? Guns don't kill people, bad tuning does. That's right, you can save lives and end sexism. You just need to match fuel to the new airflow. That's it. Okay, I know. That tells you what needs to be done, not the how. And I'll get there in a second because the fix is different if you have a naturally aspirated bike, also known as carbureted, or your bike is EFI. That's electronic fuel injection for the uninitiated. So let's address carbureted bikes. If you went from restricted exhaust, such as a stock exhaust setup, to open exhaust, you just allowed that air to move out of the cylinder way faster. And that means you need to adjust the fuel to match. Now, if you really want your engine to be its bestest, you're gonna need to match that open exhaust with some openish intake. And now the way you get more air is to open up the intake with something like a velocity stack. I will put links in the description to my favorite velocity stacks. Obviously, yes, they are mine. I'm biased. It's science time! Now you need to adjust fuel delivery. On a carbureted bike, fuel delivery is controlled by jets, which are precision fuel metering devices to help achieve the optimal amount of fuel flowing in the system. Bigger jet, more fuel. Smaller jet, less fuel. Now there's 3 types of jets in most carburetors. Yes, there's lots of variations and exceptions out there, but today we are going basic. You'll have a main jet, pilot jet, and needle jet. Now the needle jet is rarely changed, but the needle profile can be changed and the needle height can be adjusted as well. So let's set the needle jet aside for now because most of you won't even be touching that damn thing. Moving on to the pilot jet. The pilot jet controls fuel at idle to about quarter throttle. The main jet controls fuel from about half to wide open throttle. And the needle works kind of in the mid-range, about 25 to 75% throttle. You may need to adjust these jets a few times to get it right. Now the air-fuel mixture control is something that you'll have to deal with too. That is your fine-tuning knob, which controls the metering of fuel and air at idle. You're probably thinking, wow, I get it, but how do I do this, TJ?
Don't push the horses.
I have a present for you in a moment. But first, we have to briefly cover the inferior EFI bikes. Carburetor superiority! Woo! So EFI bikes don't have carbs. No needles, no pilots, no mains, no jets at all. It's not just science now, it's computers. Computers. Why did it have to be computers? I hate computers. The dog's name was Indy, but I digress. Now there are some EFI systems that can make small corrections to fuel delivery for intake and exhaust changes, but they do have their limitations. You really do need to add a fuel controller if you change your exhaust or intake. These can get pretty complicated because you need to go through a process called fuel mapping using a computer. Some fuel controllers have pre-made maps that you can choose, and it takes the guesswork out of tuning, and I'm pretty sure EFI 2000 and Cobra and some others have some really easy to use systems, even stuff you can put on your phone. Now, I wouldn't know firsthand because I can't get such illegal things here in California. If you really want to get down with waking up that mild little scooter, you want to map by hand. Now, if you want me to do a video on this that's more in depth, let me know in the comments, and I'll try to use beans and macaroni and popsicle sticks to illustrate because I can't get a fuel controller. Now, whether you have a naturally aspirated system or EFI, the proper way to upgrade to aftermarket exhaust is to bring the system back into a state of centered zen. So you're basically going to do that through a process called tuning, so the engine can run the way it's supposed to. Oh my God, it's genius. No, it's science. Now, once that's dialed in, you get the actual benefits you expected. Better throttle response, smoother power, and actual performance gains. You will last longer, stay harder, and it even cooks hot dogs. This is when the exhaust finally does what it was meant to do. Shoot ping pong balls for distance and heat up pilot station snacks. I'm telling you, you do this right, and it will give you a raging lady boner. So if you do it right, the bike's gonna feel more alive than ever instead of like a one-legged man with crutches trying to go upstairs. Now the bike ain't fighting itself, and you can ride off to the liquor mart for a can of hams. All right, enough of the science. Now finally, how do you do this on a carbureted bike? Well, I thought you'd never ask. Actually, I knew you were gonna ask. So I dropped a few links in the description to videos that I've made that will walk you through this whole process step by step so that this video isn't just too long and boring. Now remember, just putting exhaust on your bike won't make your bike an insane street machine any more than sticking feathers up your butt will make you a chicken. Now anytime you change your intake or exhaust, you must tune. I wish I had a nickel every time I said that because I'd probably have enough money to buy a gallon of gas in California. Now if you want the most out of your bike's performance, solid exhaust, a quality intake, and a good tune are the best places to start. Now if you want to learn more about your bike's performance, hit that subscribe button. Do fun.